Okay, so for my AP English class this year, I had to write a research paper on the book that I chose, and then I had to find a topic of research based on the book's time period. And so, since I was completely disinterested in reading an old British novel, I picked the first book that I saw on the list. That was a mistake. And so when I was reading the book, I really struggled to get through it, and I fought a lot of stubborn nights of I just wanted to sleep instead of reading my book. And so the book that I selected was called Robinson Crusoe, and it was written by Daniel Defoe in 1719. And so a summary of the story is about a man named Robinson Crusoe, and he defies his father's wishes and travels out to sea to go on an adventure. And so in the course of his adventure, his ship wrecks on a deserted island, and the shipwreck kills all of the men on the ship except Robinson. And so while working for his survival, he searches the remains of his boat, and he finds a Bible. And after finding it, he begins reading from it daily, and he eventually begins to form his morals to base more on what he reads. And so the story is based on his actions and beliefs of his Puritan culture that he came from, and how the Enlightenment forced religion out of society's minds, and how Crusoe had the opposite form of his spiritual journey, and how he began his adventure with more secular views, and then he began to grow stronger in his faith. So there were 4 topics that were the changes in his lifestyle as he converted to a more faith-based life. And they were prayer, faith, redemption, and evangelism. So as he changed his morals, his way of life soon formed to revolve around his newfound spiritual beliefs with prayer. And so at the beginning of the book, it has been said that Robinson's faith was an only Sunday religion. And so this meant that whenever he did use prayer, it was for his convenience and out of true desperation when it didn't really mean anything. And so the difference between his life with desperate prayer and his habitual prayer differed greatly with his outcomes and his true happiness. And when he was on the ship during his journey, he used God in times of trouble, but never really otherwise, only when he was really about life or death situation. And so after finding the Bible while alone on the island, he began to read stories about God saving people and performing miracles, and then soon discovered how his life could improve if he just talked and listened to God and believed in him all the time. So Deuteronomy 4:30 says, "When you're in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice." And so Robinson's family believed in God, but he was always known for defying their wishes that they had and their ways of life, so he felt the need to rebel a little bit. And so he didn't really follow God. And after he realized on the island the mistake that he had made, he had a little come to Jesus moment and set his schedule around what God was telling him. And the communication between you and God is a two-way street, and he'll answer whatever you talk to him about, whether it's through prayer or messages around you. In Psalm 81, it states, "You cried to me in trouble, and I saved you. I answered out of the thundercloud and tested your faith when there was no water at Meribah." While on his journey, Robinson called out a desperate prayer to God to save him and his friends from the rough waters, and then soon after, there was a dangerous thunderstorm, which was the storm that sent them crashing onto the island. Robinson was being saved without knowing it, and that's how our lives sometimes are. We have to trust in God to answer our questions and requests that we discuss with him in our time of prayer. And so that brings us to the second way that Robinson's life was improved with his renewed life, faith. A good biblical correlation to Robinson's transformation is the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. And so Philip had asked this man who was reading the book of Isaiah, and if he understood what he was reading. And so when the man said that he grasped it, but needed someone to really discuss it with, Philip taught him about the good news. The eunuch was reading, "He was led like a shepherd to the slaughter, and as a lamb is silent before the shearers, he did not open his mouth. He was humiliated and received no justice. Who could speak of his descendants? For his life was taken from the earth." And so when Robinson had found a Bible on his wrecked ship, he began to read it intently. And after many, many years, eventually another ship had crashed on the island with Caribbean natives on it, along with the slaves that they had. And so the natives were trying to kill the slaves and use them as food, because this is back in the 1600s when they believed in all that. And so Robinson secretly talked to a slave named Friday, and they defeated all of the natives that were keeping the slaves. And after all the natives were gone, Robinson and Friday became incredibly close with their bond over surviving on the island. And so they obviously began to converse and talk more about personal topics, and Robinson began teaching Friday about Christianity and biblical texts. And soon enough, Friday began understanding their newfound religion more than Robinson even did. And the faith that Friday and Robinson had for their dependence on survival was unreal, and they only found that when they depended on God to supply their needs. And as their faith grew, their worries faded, and they could go on without their lives with more ease than ever, since they had God to rely on. Defoe writes Robinson saying, "I sincerely gave thanks to God for opening my eyes," which really gave the readers a good idea of how much the transition he had improved his way of living. He had a better life physically, but also didn't have as many internal challenges to face. And while trusting in God, the patience is the key that you need to have, because he's so powerful, and you just have to trust that what God does is right instead of what we want him to do. And he has a plan for each of us, and we must trust that it is God's will that that happens. And so when it comes to the evangelism part, Robinson shows that spreading the word of God honestly can teach you as much as it can teach others. And we talked about that in Sunday school this morning, how spreading your word of faith and how you can talk to others can just teach you just as much as it can absorbing the information. So Friday quickly picked up on the messages that the Bible had taught him, and then he connected it back to the religion he had back in the Caribbean that he was learning, and he got a further grasp on what he was reading. And so informing others about God can make leaps and bounds in everyone's life whenever you do it. And even if you don't fully understand it, others can teach you more about it, and it's a good connection to have with other people. And so being confident in your beliefs and faith, and those who deny you, will only make you stronger in the end. I thought it was really cool. We also talked about that in Sunday school. Those who just try to deny your faith are either going to bring you more down, or they're going to push you back up. And you just have to keep pushing for it. And having a strong sense of how you feel and act in the eyes of God shows a lot in how you can spread your faith to others. So like if you don't take it seriously, those you're telling about God won't take you seriously either. And you have to, if they don't have the same beliefs as you, you can't be like arrogant about it. You just have to try your best to keep pushing, but don't be like believe in God or like, ooh. But you just have to be confident in what you believe in. So always be informative, but not forceful about spreading the word of God. Just be confident in what you believe in. And the last way that Robinson's life was changed was that he asked for redemption from God every day until truly finding a good God-filled mindset. And the restoration you could gain just by talking to God and asking for forgiveness is truly unbelievable. God will answer every prayer that you bring to him, given that it be in the right mindset. Like Robinson's opinion on prayer is that praying to God is being properly an act of the mind and not of the body. And by this, he's telling us that you can do as many rituals, traditions as you want, but if you're coming to God with your requests and you're lacking the sincerity of seeking that permission or forgiveness, God's going to be a little more patient with you. And it ties in with trusting God and having a good balance of faith and sincerity when conversing with God. And coming to him in meaningless desperation won't get you the redemption that you seek, but only coming in the proper mindset of prayer will there be a true conversation between you and God and about which path to follow. When coming to him in true desperation that you don't mean, you should realize that God is the final answer you need in your life if you're coming to him when you need him. So whenever Robinson would have a step forward in his faith, his life would just begin improving more. His crops would grow, the weather would improve, he'd find new materials, he'd find people to meet, all these sorts of things. And even when they wouldn't happen, his spirits were always higher. And after he started talking to God, he just became happier and more positive about life. And the optimism that this showed after his conversion was just a straight correlation to God acting through him and impacting his life as he saw fit, seeing as though he was alone for 30-some years on his island, and nothing happened until he started believing in God. And so, as you can see, Robinson Crusoe's life was changed through prayer, faith, evangelism, and redemption. And when we allow God to enter our lives can change for the better too. When we have diligent prayer, trusting God, spreading our beliefs, and asking for forgiveness, we can grow closer to God. But we aren't really the ones who's changing what's happening in our lives, honestly. Jesus is the one who gets us out of our trials, tribulations, to save us from evil. And we can come to God in many different ways, but we have to remember that it is God making the change in us. And if you want to join me in a word of prayer. Okay. Dear God, thank you for letting us come on here today to learn more about you and to just have a time of fellowship and to bring us closer to you and to just have a nice time of prayer and evangelism and to spread the word out after church today. Please let us have a safe journey home and to just have a wonderful faith-filled week and to do everything we do through you. In your name, amen.